Hi, welcome back to Fresh Faces, New Ideas. My name is David, and if you like my content, if you like the channel, please like and subscribe this video. And if you'd like to follow me further, follow me at Twitter at Faces Ideas, or you can follow me on the Center Left Radio podcast. So, like I said in the previous video, I'm going to be covering different parts of the Trump speech from CPAC. I've seen through the whole thing now. I'm not going to cover the last segment because the last segment is basically him arguing about what Trumpism is, and he just makes a whole bunch of just generalized statements that aren't really true. And I don't have the just the time to go in and fact check every single little thing he said. It's going to be take too long. So this is his segment on. He's talking about the coronavirus, opening schools and things like that. So we're gonna go over that, and that will be for all I have for CPAC. If you want to look into more CPAC, just go watch the other videos. I'm not covering every single speech, but realistically, nothing else he said after this was important.
Okay. The difference to working family is equally clear when it comes to the critical matter of getting America's children.
Okay. Very quickly to reiterate where this is, he just finished talking about immigration. He said, the media didn't ask Biden questions what they were. He never specified that, but here's what it is. So he's about to go talk about opening up schools and things like that.
Children back to school, and they must get back right now.
This is very similar to the open the economy talking point. It's you got to get them back right this second, right now, immediately. It doesn't matter what the health issues are. It doesn't matter about keeping them safe. Just get them back so the economy can keep going. It's so stupid. Look, the teachers have asked for things. They've asked to for shields and to be vaccinated and smaller classrooms in order to get back into the classrooms. The CDC has an operating guideline, and a lot of this stuff is not up to Joe Biden. Even the CDC says a lot of this stuff is based on the states, and the states don't have the funding for it because they never really got funding in the other bill, so they have to wait for this bill to get through.
Right now. Crazy. Terrible. Terrible. The Biden administration is actually bragging about the classroom education they are providing to migrant children on the border.
So I looked this up, and I could not find what exactly he was talking about. So I imagine he's just lying here. But I looked. I could not find anything related to what he's saying.
While at the same time, millions of American children are having their futures destroyed by Joe Biden's anti-science school.
Keep in mind, every single thing that's happened from the coronavirus prior to a month ago was under Donald Trump. Every single thing. On the first 400,000 deaths were on Donald Trump. The reason the schools and everything were locked down for so long was because we decided to do it the worst possible way we could. We both didn't do efficient lockdowns, and we did not support the people when we asked them to lock down. And that's why we ended up in this mess. That's why a year later, we're one of the only countries that still are dealing with getting kids back to schools.
Closures. Think of it. We're educating students on the border, but our own people, the children of our citizens themselves, are not getting the education that they deserve. There's no reason whatsoever why the vast majority of young Americans should not be back in school.
As long as you ignore science and data and the things it says that there's still a damn pandemic going on. Yeah, so if you ignore that, there is no reason for them not to be back in school. This actually goes back to one of the other speeches that happened during CPAC. They were talking about the government just shut things down for no reason. Just they just decided to kill all your businesses. Yeah, so I mean, this was a running theme for CPAC.
Immediately. The only reason that most parents do not have that choice is because Joe Biden sold out America's children to the teachers' unions. His position is morally inexcusable, you know that. Joe Biden has shamefully betrayed America's youth, and he is cruelly keeping our children locked in their homes. No reason for it whatsoever.
Again, Corona, still a pandemic. So look, are there places that have more stringent lockdowns? Yes. Are there ways to, are we dealing with this in the best that we can? I can't give you a yes or no answer. I'm not a scientist. Um, is this a gross mischaracterization of what's going on? Absolutely, it is. But look, the kids, I can't help you keep repeating this. You vaccinate the teachers. You put them behind the first responders and the essential workers. Or you put them as an essential worker, and they'll be more likely to go back. You give them the funding, but this is a state by state thing. That's part of it. So look, even while they blame Joe Biden for this, he's it's a state by state thing.
Want to get out. They're cheating the next generation of Americans out of the future that they deserve, and they do.
Keep in mind, prior to this pandemic, the millennial generation, my generation, was already slated to be less profitable than the previous generation because of the '08 crash. So now we're even worse because of this pandemic and the economic toil it did. So the generation school hasn't even started yet. They don't even have to deal with all the loans and all the other issues that come with finding a job in whatever the future economy is going to look like. So, I mean, they were cheated before this even happened.
Deserve this future. They're going to grow up and they're going to have a scar. It's a scandal of the highest order and one of the most craven acts by any president in our lifetimes. It's the teachers union, it's the votes, and it shouldn't happen. And nobody has more respect for teachers than I do. And I'll bet you a lot of the people within that union, they agree with everything I'm saying. Even the New York Times is calling out the Democrats. The mental and physical.
So what they're talking about is the shifting of how Biden. There's been some miscommunications for how this has been rolled out. Just saying like what constitutes a school being open, and they really should have their talking points better for that. But it's not the New York Times saying, oh, you have to let them back now. That's not accurate.
Physical health of these young people is reaching a breaking point. Tragically, suicide attempts have skyrocketed, and student depression is now.
Both things are up in general over the last year because of, pandemic.
Commonplace and at levels that we've never seen before. The Democrats now say we have to pass their $1.9 trillion boondoggle to open schools, but a very small part of it has to do with that. You know where it's going.
They didn't imply that the whole thing would open schools anyway. It's a general rescue plan to encompass a wide swath of what's going on and to solve a lot of problems. Does it solve all of them? No. But is it a significant step forward? Yes.
It's going to bail out badly run Democrat cities.
Keep in mind, and this is not a talking point I've had here yet, but it's one I've had on Center Left Radio. Almost every single red state runs a deficit that's boosted by a blue state. Almost every single one. That's just a fact. So while he says badly run Democratic cities, almost every single blue state is funding a red state.
So much of it. But billions of dollars for schools remain unspent from the COVID relief bills that were paid.
There's two things for this. So part of it is because of how each school is budgeting it, because the original CARES Act was supposed to budget them to 2022, which is next year. So there a lot of schools are doing it monthly. They're seeing what exactly they need for each month, whether it's hiring nurses, paying staff, getting more supplies. So that's why a lot of them, the budget is hasn't been spent yet, or that's why it's sitting there. So when you hear statements like, oh, $1 trillion has been spent, $1 billion has been spent, it's because of that. And part of it was they threw so much money at this the first time, and through this, that even all that money might not ultimately end up getting spent anyway. And if it doesn't, it goes back to the federal government to be reallocated somewhere else. So it's not like we're just throwing more at it. This money is there for a reason, and giving them more for that money now means that they can spend the previous monies and feel safer that there is actually money to come in behind it. Because when the first CARES Act and stuff passed, we didn't know how long this was going to be, or how much the or how long they would need this money to go.
Last year. So on behalf of the moms, dads, and children of America, I call on Joe Biden to get the schools open and
For the party of states' rights, they're really, trampling all over them by arguing that the federal government should be forcing them to open schools when it's a state's choice.
get them open now. They're a great thing to do. When I left office, and we're very proud of this because this was something that they said could not be done. The FDA said it, everybody said it. Any article you read said it couldn't be done. It would be years and years. I handed the new administration what everyone is now calling a modern day medical miracle.
I mean, he's right. This is absolute the fact that they got these vaccines out and they're as effective as they are. The Pfizer and the Moderna, even the Johnson & Johnson, which is only a single shot, is about accurate as the other first shot. That is a modern miracle. It is incredible that they figured out how to do this so quickly, and the long term effects, even beyond COVID, whether it has to do with the flu or other future diseases like this, is just unbelievable how well that things are going to change because of the fact that the scientists figured all of this out.
It's the greatest thing to happen in hundreds of years. 2 vaccines produced in record time with numerous others on the way, including the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that was approved just yesterday. And therapeutic relief also. If you're sick, we have things now that are incredible. What has taken place over the last year under our administration. It would have taken any other president at least 5 years.
Maybe. So look, it is not clear. It is entirely possible that a different administration could have absolutely ended up with the same science because of, if you look into the Pfizer vaccine didn't, and this is something he's going to go into later, didn't take any money from the Trump administration. The only money they did was a potential deal for the future. They said, if our vaccine is accepted by the FDA, we're earmarking like $10 million or whatever the number was. And they did this with a whole bunch of companies. Not every company took the money from the Trump administration in order to do their own research. So it is possible that there would have been vaccines under a different administration. The things that are certain that would have taken years for another administration to hit is the death count. There is zero chance in my mind that if you would run this crisis under any single other, either Hillary, Bernie, or any of the other Republican members who ran for president in 2016, we would have hit 400,000 deaths. It is inconceivable that we would have handled this as poorly as we did under Donald Trump.
And we got it done in 9 months. Everyone says 5 years, so 5 years.
I don't even think the 5-year timeline is accurate. I believe it was like 1 or 2. It was the general estimate I remember hearing.
Can you imagine if you had to go through what all of the countries of the world who are now getting the vaccine or soon will be getting it from various companies, but can you imagine if all of those countries had to go through what they've been going through over the last year? You'd lose hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah, all those other countries that are more or less back to normal, other than us, hundreds of millions of people. We're the only country who has lost 500,000 people. This is the largest to second largest, depending on where you tag the baseline for the Civil War death event in American history. Period. When they argue they would have lost millions of people, yes, millions of people died across the world, but almost about 500,000 people died in America. And it is nowhere close to that anywhere else. And it did not have to happen.
I pushed the FDA like they have never been pushed before. They told me that loud and clear. They have never been pushed like I pushed them. I didn't like them at all. But once we got it done, I said, I now love you very much. What the Trump administration has done with vaccines has, in many respects, perhaps saved large portions of the world, not only our country, but large portions of the world.
Yes and no. Yes, because they did, for the Moderna at least, and I think Johnson Johnson, they did push to help that vaccine. But a lot of it will come down to how, after these wealthier countries like us and Europe and Russia and the wealthier countries have distributed the vaccine among their population, how it will then go to the poorer countries, because they're not going to be able to afford to buy it from, Pfizer and stuff. So how the overall sharing of the vaccine is implemented will ultimately affect, how many lives are ultimately saved from this.
Not only did we push the FDA far beyond what the bureaucrats wanted to do, we also put up billions and billions of dollars.
So this statement over the bureaucrats that wanted to do, I'm not sure. Like there's nobody who is reasonably saying, you know what, I don't want to push, as far as safety, just get rid of all the safety guidelines. We have to have every single safety guidelines. There is absolutely, I can't imagine that was the thing. So, when he's arguing it against the bureaucrats, it's mostly because there is red tape in general, because there's no real there haven't been diseases that have spread so rapidly and killed so many people, in which they needed to rush things out. And had we had a better job testing this, maybe this had been similar to like a flu type event, they would have done more testing, because we still aren't entirely sure what all the further side effects will be a couple of years from now based on some of these vaccines. But I can't believe that there was people saying, you know what, we have to follow every single guideline to the letter.
Billion to produce the vaccines before we knew they were going to work. It was called a calculated bet, or a calculated.
Yeah, a lot of these companies who did under Warp Speed, they said, Warp Speed was basically like, once we'll give you some funding now, and then we're going to earmark however many doses of the vaccine, if it works and if it passes our FDA in the future. That's what Warp Speed was.
Risk. We took a risk, because if we didn't do that, you still wouldn't have the vaccines. You wouldn't have them for a long time. So think of that. We took this bet. We made a bet because we thought we were on a certain track. But you'd be starting to make them right now. It would be a long time before you ever saw them.
Again, this isn't true, because the Pfizer vaccine did not take any of the Warp Speed money, so they wouldn't be starting to make it now. Maybe we wouldn't have access to them because we would have had to pay more to secure them, but they're also an American company, so it is likely that the pricing would have been similar. But the Pfizer vaccine at least would still be out.
It takes 60 to 100 days to manufacture and inspect new doses. And that means that 100% of the increased availability that we have now was initiated by our administration. 100%.
I mean, yes, that is true, but, were we not going to buy the vaccine? This is a stupid argument. You said you were going to have 300 million doses by the end of the year. You ended up with you didn't even hit your 20 million mark that you tried as well.
In fact, the director of National Institutes of Health, Francis Collins, he's Fauci's boss, actually. I think he's a Democrat, too, by the way, recently said that our Operation Warp Speed was absolutely breathtaking, and that the Trump administration deserves full credit.
Look, I've said it time and again. Yes, he does deserve credit for some of the vaccines, but you also don't get credit for how badly you screwed this up. So yeah, Warp Speed did help, and in some ways it absolutely did, but it's not solely responsible for the vaccines.
Which we did. And as conservatives and Republicans, never forget that we did it. Never let them take the credit, because they don't deserve the credit. They just followed. Now they're following our plan, but this has been something that they really call it an absolute miracle. Joe Biden is only implementing the plan that we put in place. And if we had an honest media, which we don't.
This is various levels of true. They did have a plan. It was not a good plan. It was not really in depth, similar to a lot of other plans, how they dealt with, other aspects of this pandemic. It was not in depth. The Joe Biden administration expanded a lot. They gave the states a lot more guidance than that the Trump administration did. The federal government stepped in a lot more to help set things up. So yes, to some extent, they were following the Biden plan. The Biden is following the Trump plan, but there was a lot of infrastructure and stuff that they had to set up.
They would say it loud and clear. By the time I left that magnificent house at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, almost 20 million Americans had already been vaccinated. 1.5 million doses were administered on my final day alone. 1.5 million in a day.
We're at 75 million now, and it's about 2.5 million per day.
Yet Biden said just a few days ago that when he got here, meaning the White House, there was no vaccine. He said, there's no vaccine? Oh, good. Say it again, Joe. Now, I don't think he said that, frankly, in a malicious way. I really don't.
They were referring to a surplus. There wasn't a lot of surplus. So, I mean, there's more to this. I'm not getting into though.
I absolutely believe he said that because he didn't really know what the hell was happening.
To be fair, that is actually a statement that's applied to a lot of the Biden staff, going into this administration. They just didn't know what was going on because there was not information left to them.
But never let them forget this was us. We did this.
Yep. Don't let them forget. Anytime they claim this, remember that they are responsible for how bad this turned out.
Distribution is moving along according to our plan, and it's moving along really well. We had the military, what they've done, our generals, and all of the people, what they've done is incredible. But remember, we took care of a lot of people, including, I guess, on December 21st, we took care of Joe Biden.
So this actually just broke while I was prepping for this video and doing the other one. According to The Hill and a whole bunch of other sources, Trump and Melania both got vaccinated in January. And they just didn't tell anybody about it. They had the virus, and then they got vaccinated and didn't say anything about it because he wanted to have this appeal that he was, above it and he didn't need the vaccination. So this just broke today that he was vaccinated in January.
He got his shot. He got his vaccine. He forgot. It shows you how unpainful that vaccine shot is. So everybody go get your shot. He forgot. So it wasn't very traumatic, obviously, but he got his shot. And it's good that he got his shot. Last year, I predicted to you that the extremism, corruption, and incompetence of the Biden administration would be literally unprecedented.
I'm just not even getting into how corrupt his administration was and stuff.
American history. Unfortunately, he has proven me 100% right. Already, as president, Biden has urged Congress to pass legislation shredding your Second Amendment.
Okay, I'm not going over any more for this, so let's just wrap this up. So, what is the ticket with this? Does Donald Trump deserve some credit for the vaccine rollout? Yes. Warp speed did have some effect. At least in the case of the Moderna vaccine, they did take some of the money from the Trump administration. For the Pfizer, they didn't. Pfizer did it by themselves. So him saying, "Oh, look, we bought all these doses of Pfizer," well, of course you did. You weren't just not going to buy the vaccine when it came out. It was just a down payment. You did that with a whole bunch of other companies that just hadn't come through with those. So as for schools, it's mostly a state thing. The government, the federal government, can give guidelines. They have given some guidelines. This is part of why his CARES Act has to pass his $1.9 trillion act, so that it can give more resources to the state governments and to the schools in order to produce things faster. Also, it helps the states supply the rest of their federal workforce, which includes police. So every time you hear Republicans say the Democrats are arguing for defund the police, you ask them if they voted for the CARES Act, which none of them did, and then they say no. They say, so therefore you are actively trying to deny the police funding because the states need it there. Okay. So thank you for watching this video. I will be back with more later. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, or follow me at Twitter at FacesIdeas. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.